Last Sunday morning, millions of people were hoping to greet the new morning, $1.6 billion richer. As the world record Powerball jackpot grew week by week, long lines of people, you saw them on the news if you watched, were waiting their turn to purchase a ticket or many tickets, praying for the right combinations that would ensure them an abundant amount of cash, which, in a sense, would turn their world upside down, or, depending on how you look at it, right side up. 3 lucky people were hit by an asteroid. 3. I mean, that's what the odds were of winning the Powerball ticket. 1 in 292.2 million, or the same chance as you being hit by an asteroid when you walk out of church today. These people were sold, 3 of them sold the winning lotto tickets, which did produce for them an abundant amount of cash, $533 million in 30 annual installments, or if greedy, $328 million in one lump sum. Abundance. Yes, I did buy one lotto ticket. I did. I thought, got to be a way to help Bethany Christian Church out of this deficit here, so why not? The common theme in today's lessons is the amazing grace and the abundant generosity of God. Even in the face of scarcity or extreme hardship, God's love never runs dry. Remember that. In the face of scarcity, in the face of whatever hardship it is that you face in life, God's love doesn't run dry. The prophet Isaiah is so excited about what God has done for Israel. God has restored Israel from 50 years of living in captivity in the country of Babylon. God has delivered the people through a difficult track, through the desert wilderness, back to their home in Jerusalem. And it's as if God has breathed new life into the people. New life back home in Jerusalem. Isaiah celebrates this monumental homecoming by writing about a wedding motif. Isaiah says, as a young man delights and marries a young woman, so God rejoices over Jerusalem and shows off the city as if it were a young bride to all the world. Believe it. Jerusalem and Israel did not look like a pretty young bride in its days of destruction from King Nebuchadnezzar and Babylonia. So according to God, looks don't matter. In the lesson from 1 Corinthians, the Apostle Paul writes that God's abundant generosity has ensured that every possible need of this young church in Corinth, Greece will be provided for through the outpouring of the gifts of the Spirit given to its members. Bethany Christian Church, in that passage, God reminds us that we can't be church by ourselves. We need each other. We offer our gifts individually for the common good of our community because we all feel something for each other. We love and we respect and we trust and we need each other. We want to support each other in this ministry because the world needs us. And the community needs the wisdom and the transformative acts that you and I together offer the community. The Gospel of John takes us to a wedding with Jesus and uses the joyous atmosphere of a community wedding to teach us something about the transformative acts of God. According to the fourth Gospel, Jesus' ministry begins in this blissful setting of great joy and abundance. There's no taking Jesus into the wilderness for 40 days to be tempted by the devil. No, in the Gospel of John, after Jesus is baptized, we go to a wedding feast in Cana, Kirbet, Cana. Perhaps this wedding feast was a wedding that was close to Jesus' own family because it was Jesus' mother, Mary, who feels responsible when the wine runs low. Mary isn't mentioned by name, only the mother of Jesus. Mary, as we call her, was the first to realize that an embarrassing situation was shaping up. The supply of wine was running out. And in the culture of Jesus' day, a wedding was a community-wide celebration for up to 7 days. After the wedding, the newlyweds were honored in some ways in the community. And for a host, most likely of which were the parents, to run out of wine at a wedding celebration would be a real act of disgrace for the bride and the groom. It would be considered an act of great inhospitality. They would never get over that social embarrassment. What a relief it was for Mary to look up and see that Jesus and the disciples were there. Surely Jesus would know what to do. And Mary simply looked at Jesus and said, "They don't have any wine." Well, Jesus did respond back to her. He said, "Look, why look at me? What concern is that to me and to you?" That's not a question to Mary. That's a question to you and to me. What are the implications of our inhospitality? What are the implications that we don't reach out? What are the implications of a celebration gone bad? These few words tell us a lot about the situation at hand. It's going to be a story, and these words from Jesus to Mary that will be reflected in the stories that come in the following chapters of John's Gospel. As Jesus meets people, Jesus will meet somebody who is in great need. As Jesus travels from town to town, Jesus will find people who are hurting and dying. As Jesus and his disciples perform acts of compassion and service to others, they will find that people's futures are threatened. We would expect Jesus in this situation, like all others that we will read about, to respond and to fix the situation. Everything that we read about him shows what compassion Jesus has for somebody who is hurting. But his reply back to his mother was simply this: "Woman, what concern is it to me and to you that the wine is running out?" And then Jesus says something strange like, "My hour hasn't yet arrived." Jesus' response is surely symbolic of something else that is going on in the story that the writer wants you and I to understand. In the Gospel of John, the term hour will appear from time to time. And the word hour can refer to a measure of time, but it also refers to a specific moment in Jesus' life when Jesus entered his glory. And that simply means when Jesus enters Jerusalem for the final time, he enters his glory, his passion, his suffering, and then his resurrection and ascension back to God. For Jesus, that is his hour. But according to this story, the hour of Jesus' full manifestation has not yet come. And John takes great care in revealing Jesus' glory in its proper time and place. We are only at the beginning of John's Gospel. The hour comes later. So Mary turns to the servants at the wedding party and says to them, just do what he tells you. This shows Mary has great confidence in her son. Just do what he tells you. She has faith in him. She knows the power in him. She knows what Jesus is capable of. Mary, the first disciple, models the relationship of every believer to Jesus, you and I included. Do what he tells you. That's good advice for you and me. Read the lessons. Read the scriptures. Do what he tells you to. Doing whatever Jesus commands is the essence of discipleship, and you know that the height of that essence is to love God and to love your neighbor as much as you do yourself. Do it, church. And Jesus will later say in his gospel, you are my friends if you do what I tell you. You didn't choose me, but I chose you. I called you and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit. And this is what I tell you. Love one another. Man, doesn't our world need to hear that story? If the world would only do what Jesus tells us to do, love one another. You know how the story turns out. Jesus has the servants go and fill 6 stone jars with water, takes a handful or a cup to the steward at the wedding banquet, and as soon as the steward, who is the head of the service of food and wine, as soon as he tasted it, he knew it was choice wine. So the water becomes the best wine in abundance, 150 gallons worth, enough to ensure the community having a good time. The story reminds us it's not about, it's simply more than transformation of some material substance into another. The story reminds us that a tragedy is prevented. A new marriage is saved from humiliation. Sheila and Jim, the pressure is on you. I don't know what's being served for the reception after the wedding, but make sure it doesn't run out. Or else we'll go to Casey's and get some Gatorade. I love that. The story mirrors our situation. There's so much in our lives that make us anxious, that we worry about. Not only weddings and graduations and birthdays and other celebrations, but there's so much that makes us anxious because we are in control of so many things, or we are put in charge of so many other things that sometimes we just don't feel like we measure up. And this story says, turn anxiety into peace. Turn anxiety into peace. Emptiness becomes fullness. Fear transforms emptiness. fear is transformed from a feeling of anxiousness and emptiness into an act of love. This could be any situation that you or I find ourselves in. This story and each story that follows in John's Gospel informs the church in every age, the church of centuries ago, the church in this postmodern world, and the church that will be here far beyond us in whatever form it is. This story informs us to do whatever Jesus tells us to do. That whatever Jesus touches will be an act of transformation. Or at least, transformation is possible. Transforming a heart that's filled with hatred into a heart that's filled with love. Transforming eyes that can only see prejudice and divisions within society into eyes that see that all of God's people are loved and are part of God's body. Transforming hands that are so bent on violence and destruction into hands that heal wounds and build societies and communities of peace and wholeness. John wants the church to see in this story more than a miracle of water turned into wine. John wants us to see that whenever Jesus comes into a person's life, there is possibility of transformation, the possibility of hope and change, the possibility of new life and resurrection. For all of the people who are addicted in our world and in our communities today, this, above all passages, should give hope. We don't always have to walk in darkness. I think our world needs to hear that. The Ferguson, Missouris, and the Baltimore areas, in New York, and the Chicagos of our world, and even the Lincoln and Omaha, Nebraskas, need this message. Paul says if anyone is in Christ, then he or she is a new creation. Church, let us join with Jesus in bringing one act of kindness at a time into a world that so desperately needs what we can give. We offer you an invitation to become a part of a community that seeks to be faithful in our discipleship, our call of following Jesus. Won't you come and be a part of that community, of this community?